Hi everybody, thanks for watching this. I wanted to tell you this is a little time sensitive. Greetings, dear ones. I'm Kryon of Magnetic Service. For those listening who are in Perth, Australia, beautiful area with a glistening ocean, clear, lovely, where you can look out upon Gaia itself and pause in the wonder and the spectacular sights and views that are here. Dear ones, there are so many human beings who are asking the same questions. This is a time of changing energy. And as the energy starts to shift, reality itself is being questioned. Humans who have lived a certain way all of their lives are starting to look at themselves and saying, what do I feel that is different? We have spoken so many times about the shift, about the new consciousness which is coming and who it is who will make the difference on this planet. And the who it is are the ones who are listening to the words right now. There is a shift coming that is unexpected. Not frightening, just unexpected. And we've never really talked about it in this way before. So I'll just tell you, it is one thing called dimensional shift. And for you to understand any of this, I have to start at the beginning. I'm going to discuss dimensions. And you would say, well, that's not very spiritual. Really? We'll see. If you were a single dimensional person in one, you'd be on a piece of paper and you'd go in one direction. And that would be your perception, period. Couldn't do anything else. If you add 2 dimensions to it, suddenly you can go another direction on that flat piece of paper. And that's your perception. And if somebody told you about a concept of up or down, you'd laugh at them, because that's not in the purview of your consciousness. It's not anything that people do. If you're in 3 dimensions, suddenly you're on a globe instead of a piece of paper, and you have up and down, back and forth. Now you're far more free. You look backwards into the 1 and the 2, and you say, well, that was silly and stupid to think I could only go in one direction in a piece of paper. Now I know better. Now I'm in 3. If you add the 4th, it's a little more esoteric, a little more brainy. It's about time. So the 4th dimension was one that lets you then start measuring things and know about the time it takes to do things. You have the concept of time. And there you are. And there is where you have been, and that's where, and I'll say it, you've been stuck. Now you'll say, wait a minute. We were born into 4. This is what humans do. This is what is normal for humanity. We're in 4 dimensions. There are those who say, well, what's in the higher dimensions? You see, you cannot go there with your mind. Intellectual, you can't go there. You think you can, but no more than the one on the piece of paper could go into the globe. Can you go into 5, 6, 7, 8? Because you just don't even know what they are. You have no idea. How many dimensions is God in? You might ask. God, Spirit, Creative Source, whatever name you wish for that where you came from. God is in all dimensions. All right? Follow my logic, because I have something to tell you. Scientists, and it hasn't been lately, have known now for over 2 decades that certain things around you are multidimensional, way beyond 4. And they're head scratchers. They don't understand them. But they started to discover, as they looked at atomic structure, that lo and behold, many, many dimensions were in every single atom. The atoms in the chair that you sit in, the atoms in the body that you reside in. All atomic structure, therefore, was multidimensional. Scientists could identify 11 or 12, but that told them there were probably an infinite number of dimensional possibilities in every single atom on the planet. What are you made of? And the answer is multidimensional atoms. Where is God? God is in every single dimension in all of them. Where are you? Number 4. How can that be? What is it then that would determine dimensional awareness? And what does it mean to be in a higher dimension? It's so interesting. You have to honor the concept of linearity. Humans are linear, multidimensional things are not. The only way that I can show this to you is to give you something very simple. How long is a piece of string? You will say, well, let me get out my measuring stick, and you will measure it, and you will tell me. How long does someone live? You will have the clock, and you will measure that. The concept of linearity is that every single thing, including life, must have a beginning and an end. That is linearity. And if you sit there and say, well, isn't that reality? I will tell you, no, it is not. That is your reality in 4 dimensions. Everything has to have a beginning and an end. So you start asking questions about yourself, your soul. Isn't it interesting that this planet, as an agreement of one God, that all humans will have a soul, whatever that means, and that the soul would continue even after the human dies. So there is the acknowledgement that a soul is apart from the 4 dimensions and seemingly goes and goes and goes, and yet no one is questioning what happened before you got here. How long is your soul? How old is your soul? In a linear fashion, there has to be a beginning and an end. What about that piece of string? Let's say we take that piece of string and we tie it together. Now it's a loop. How long is the string? The answer is you cannot measure it now because it's in a loop. So does that mean it's unmeasurable? No. So how long is the loop? And the answer is infinitely long. It's forever. Now, when you start to apply that to other things, perhaps that are living, including that which your soul, it starts to then twist your mind just a little. And you say, how does that really work? And the answer is, it works well. Your soul is forever. That which is in your body is part of that multidimensional atomic structure that it always was and always will be. And yet that's not how you see it, because that's just a little too strange. Is your soul inside your body or is it outside? And how big is it? All linear questions that cannot be answered in a linear way. Here's another example you may like or not. Let's say you have a wristband of some kind. And let's say that wristband can be removed. A pair of scissors will remove it. Let's say there's an ant crawling on the band. The ant is crawling on the outside, then maybe the ant will crawl on the inside. And so when you say, "Where are you, ant?" it'll say on the outside or on the inside. You realize the ant really can't be on the inside and the outside at the same time, now could it? Take that band and cut it with scissors. Take it and twist it one half and tape it back together. And now when the ant crawls on that, it's called a Mobius strip. And the ant is on the outside and the inside, all at the same time. Dear ones, that is simply a simple Simon way of telling you that multidimensionality is something that you have a very difficulty understanding. Kryon, why are you telling this? I will tell you the next step. What is it that determines the dimension you're in? Did you ever ask that? If you walk around with full dimensionality in your atomic structure, what is it that keeps you in 4? Let me take you somewhere beautiful. In this society, one of the major prophets you would have, you call the Master of Love. The Master of Love walked this planet 2,000 years ago. And he was different. This human being was multidimensional. Wherever he walked, he would encounter those, perhaps, who were sick. And when he touched them, they weren't sick anymore. It's been told that the grass grew under his feet as he walked, and animals followed him. There's report after report that he had control over physics, that he could make things out of nothing and change things from one to another. In all of this beauty, a 4-dimensional human being had one reaction: fear. To them it was magic, and you know what happened eventually. You might be interested in the healing part, for we've not really discussed this much, but you should hear this. Are other things that are alive on the planet also having specific dimensionality? Yes. Funny you should ask. Would a virus have a dimensional perception? After all, it's alive. And the answer is yes. It's a 3D entity. It doesn't even know about time. In that way, it's stupid. It will infect a host and live on the host, not understanding that in time it will kill itself. Along comes a multidimensional human being, infusing a higher dimensional perception onto a diseased person, and the disease cannot exist in a higher dimension, and the disease dies. There are so many human beings who have for a moment slipped out of their 4-dimensional pattern. Either in euphoria or in fear, they have gone past that 4-dimension, and for a few moments their whole body rang with a multidimensional which is timeless, and the disease in them shattered because it could not stay in a high-dimensional place. Dear ones, there'll come a time when humanity moves past 4 dimensions, and there will be no disease because it's a 3-dimensional entity. What was it that determined 4 or beyond? And the answer is consciousness. Consciousness is the motivator, the ruler, the changer of dimensionality in humans. I have told you repeatedly that if you start to become a compassionate human being, if you start to understand the profundity of the love of God, that it starts to move you dimensionally. It moves you, dear ones, past 4 into that place that you can't count anymore. You get off of that peg and you feel it and you know it. I've changed and I don't know why. And we told you what the results would be. You wouldn't age as much. Isn't it interesting? That dimensional perception will take you off the clock. What scientist was it who told you that your fourth dimension, being time, is variable? It was Einstein. What would happen if you move into a dimensionality where there is no time, or the time is different? Your body then won't age. What human being do you know that was written about that you all have a name? Abraham. This man, he was talking to God. He was talking also to multiple angels. He was getting instructions, and he lived for 900 years. There are those who say, well, that has to be a typo in the Bible. It isn't. He lived 900 years because this man had to be multidimensional to do what he did, to be who he was. At the beginning, dear ones, it was different. So I want you to understand, what is it that changes dimensions within you? And it's your consciousness. The master of love, multidimensional, high consciousness, even controlled physics. That's what that's what compassion does. That's what happens when you have compassion that you can't even measure. That's what happens when you have an individual who's so compassionate they can feel every human being around them all the time. In a very good and positive way, and not a way that would disable them. In a way where they can think about good things and it would be broadcast to others who would receive the good things. That's the master of love. That's a multidimensional human being. I'll tell you something I've never said before. Right now on this planet, there are people who can make things out of nothing with their hands. With high consciousness in very special places. Right now on this planet, there are those who can sit in midair. You call it levitation and you laugh. They can do it. Why is that possible? What are they doing? How could it be? And I will tell you, it is the perception of the consciousness that you're in. It is the change of human nature into a very beautiful, beautiful paradigm that you are barely starting to touch, called infinite love and infinite compassion. It's going to slow down your aging. It's going to make you a person that wakes up compassionate and doesn't worry about time. Understanding that there's something bigger than you ever thought, your soul. You become closer to your soul the higher you get in your perception of dimension. And in that, dear ones, the higher you get and closer to your very soul, the longer you live. The less the disease will attach itself. The more people who will look at you and say, I don't know what you have, but I want it. They will see balance and they will see love. They will see caring. This is the new human. Be aware that dimensionality, you're moving into other dimensions, and I will not call it 5 or 6, because dimensionality becomes unlinear when you pass 4. And you'll stop asking the questions, how long is a string? You'll stop asking the questions, how big is something? How big is God? If you're part of God, how big are you? You want to know how big your soul is? It's as big as God is. Did you know there are others in other universes who know you? And that would stagger your mind to know how big you are. Not how big your body is, dear ones, but how big that consciousness is that's eternal. That's in every one of you. You are magnificent. I have been coming to this planet now for 30 years. And my message, every time I arrive, don't believe anybody who tells you you're less than magnificent. Don't believe anybody who tells you you're dirty. Because that's not how God sees you. That's how humans see you. know these things. I'm going to continue this discussion tonight. And so it is. Hi, everybody. Thanks for watching this. I wanted to tell you this is a little time sensitive. Greetings, dear ones. I'm Kryon of Magnetic Service. It may sound cryptic, but as it is above, so it is below. And the fractals of time are the same, no matter what the time is. And the patterns of the large are the patterns of the small. And in that there is a secret. And the biggest secret of all, when it comes to these kinds of statements, is what is being discovered within human consciousness. For human consciousness is a player in the physics of everything. It cannot be discounted. It must be in the laws of physics, and it will be. For it is the catalyst that often can change that which we say is the relationship between the parts. All cryptic right now for you. I want to give you some history. And the history is of astronomy and physics. In order to point out something that is extremely real, that can come right home to your own body. It's fascinating for some. It's science. It's real. An astronomer, a female astronomer named Vera Rubin, made a discovery many years ago. And she looked at the Andromeda galaxy, very similar to your own, and studied it for years slowly, and something occurred, a discovery, amazing. She discovered that all of the stars went around the center of that galaxy at the same identical speed. Now that is not what happens in your solar system. In fact, it flies in the face of Newtonian science, or Kepler. All of the things that you base the motion of matter on was wrong. And when she discovered it, she handed it over to the community, and they studied it to confirm and validate she was right. Now, here's where it gets fun. For in physics and astronomy, what you've had for decades and decades are rules of physics that you watched happen over and over. You used them to fly to the stars, to the asteroids, to the moon, all of the mathematics that you used based on Newton, based on Kepler. And then you look at another galaxy and realize it's just like yours, something you could not measure because you're within it. She saw in a faraway galaxy, not too far, very close actually to you. And so what they did with this information is to say they have discovered a piece and a part of Newtonian science they never knew. Now look at what they've done. They've taken what they know and have altered it to fit the rules of what they see. And that became the invention of dark matter. There had to be something that they didn't see, which was altering what they know to be, which is Newtonian and Kepler science. The invention of dark matter, therefore, became something, an invention, because they didn't know what they didn't know. Vera, in the last 10 years of her life, started to object. Here, she was the one who exposed this wonderful idea of dark matter. And yet she started to object. She separated herself from the males. And she started to proclaim what she believes she discovered was new physics. Something that had never been seen before. So don't alter what you know. Go to what you don't know. Take a look at something that never was revealed before, a relationship between the parts of the center of a galaxy doing something that would literally entangle all the stars together so they'd rotate like a plate, all the same speed relatively. To this day, no one has listened to that, but she knew before she passed over that she had discovered something that nobody knew about yet. Something new that was the relationship between the parts of a galaxy. As above, so below. For that relationship, dear ones, goes right to atomic structure. Physics is physics. Big physics and little physics echo one another. They're fractals of themselves. And you don't get something completely and totally different simply because it's large. And in between this huge and small, in between the rules of the fractals, is the human being. And in the human being, I will say yet again, the secret to everything you want. And what I mean by want, that would be longer life, health, peace, balance, joy, benevolence, all of these things. The secret is the relationship between the parts. And now you have to start looking at one of the parts you never thought was a part. Define consciousness. What is it? I will give you a non-technical definition of consciousness. The consciousness of a human being is what comes out of your mouth. High or low? It's in the expectations of everyday verbiage and language, everyday thoughts. Whether you expect the worst, whether you complain, whether you're not happy with things, or you're never happy with things, or whether you look at the world differently and you see that which is benevolent because you can have peace in understanding a bigger picture. When somebody stands in front of you and calls you names, there may be obscenities. You look at them and you say, I see the God in you. I'm sorry you're having a bad day. And that's the truth. That is the truth. That is a basic, beautiful, sacred truth. They have the same peace of God you do. And by choice, they have chosen a consciousness which is difficult. Difficult for you to see and for them to be in. And when you look at it, the relationship of the parts between your soul and their soul can intertwine for a moment. And in a way, they can feel that which you send to them, which is love, understanding, benevolence, in the process of them gesticulating and calling you names. And that, my dear friends, is spiritual maturity and balance and understanding. That's what you strive for. The relationship between the parts is the secret for long life, and the parts are between consciousness and the soul. It is the extension of the channel last night. But it's more than that. This coherence that you talk about is very real. It's a harmony. A harmony that is beyond that which is on paper or on the screen or numbers. It's a harmony that is felt and owned. You own it. And it's not just for a moment. Mothers, you've all felt it. Definition of pure coherence. Mom looking into that infant's eyes at birth. Comes out of you. Opens its eyes given to you, and you look upon the face of lineage, of you. And for a moment, there is 100% coherence between you and your child, the soul that has just come out of you. Is it possible to duplicate that? Dear ones, that is exactly what we want you to duplicate. Could you develop perhaps an exercise? I don't want you to try to look in the mirror and open your eyes and do this. That won't work. That doesn't work. It's too linear. Way too linear. Instead, perhaps you could look inside yourself and see the child that was there. For all of you were there. And in that moment, I want you to see your soul, which is old and has infinite wisdom as part of the creative source, looking at you for the first time in that human body. And feel the coherence between being fresh, new, young, just here, and the soul which is old, that is also you. And the relationship for the parts for that moment is beautiful, compassionate, coherent, joyful, laughing. Welcome back. Here we are again. Let's go do it. And if you can imagine such a thing from the depths of that which is your compassion, desire, and wisdom for balance, you will invoke the inner child within, and you'll start a coherence with yourself. You'll be able to love yourself clearly, because all you'll see is that new and fresh you. The soul does not age. Only the body ages. The soul does not. And so the freshness that was there is still there. Regardless of what has happened in your life, regardless, it doesn't matter. You can go to that place of freshness and newness and compassion and love and rekindle it. This is how a human being begins to love themselves. There has to be a recalibration of some sort beyond just that of wanting it or talking about it or verbalizing it. You got to own it. And it's there as a resource to be owned. Imagine if you could rewind the clock just for a moment to that moment of birth. Not when you looked into the eyes of your mother, but when you looked into the eyes of your own soul. An ancient, wise old soul. And for an instant you looked at one another and there was full, total coherence, joy, compassion, benevolence. You recognized each other. Here you are again in a new biological body ready to start anew. And there is that which would recognize one with the other, and the relationship between the parts is perfect. What's different now? Age? Things that have happened? What's different now? Are you starting to react perhaps to that which is around you? It's made you angry? Are you frustrated? Do you have anxiety over what you cannot control? Do you realize that all of those things are your choice? That's the consciousness of free choice. And in that free choice, you have that which is possible to do whatever you want with it. Totally in control. And in that, you can change what comes out of your mouth. You can change that which you think. You can start to exercise the muscle of compassion and benevolence. And when you do, dear ones, it starts to create a coherence with that which is your soul. Some say it's your heart. That ancient part of you which knows all. And that's then what creates the peace. That's then what slows the chemistry of aging. That's what keeps the diseases from attaching themselves to you. It goes way beyond that which is your brain. Consciousness is not necessarily something that is generated from the brain alone. It comes from that which is the relationship between the parts of the human being. That which you think, that which you've been told, that which is in the synapse, and that which is in your heart. How do things work? How have you been told they work? Do they have to be forced? Do they work with complaining? And the answer is no. And you know better, and you know that. And yet the habits are there, are they not? Back to the message of last night, but beyond it, way beyond it. If the secrets of physics, all physics, is the relationship to the parts, one with another, then the secrets to all that you wish in a DNA that can be mastery is the relationship to the parts. What you think and who you are. The ancient part of you, which is the soul, the current part of you, which is the consciousness of the human who you are. The closer together they become, the more you train that which is in the pineal and the heart and the brain to be closer to the ancient benevolence of the soul. The closer they get, the more perfect the coherence becomes. And in that coherence is magic. That's what allows you to live hundreds of years. There'll come a day when coherence, or something they call coherence, is taught from birth. And in that, there is the cognization, the belief, the understanding that consciousness is a player on the field of physics. The secret to humanity that will not war is coherence. The secret to humanity without disease is coherence. Coherence between the parts of the human being. A balance between that which is emotional, intellectual. A balance between that which is very esoteric, called the soul, and very linear, called the brain. And when that balance is achieved, dear ones, that's when you start feeling you belong here. That all is well here. And that when those issues occur, as they always will in duality, you have perfect solution. You understand them. You know them. You can smile. This or something better. I'll get through this. I always do. Not all humanity will be alike. There will always be those coming in, learning. There will always be those above who have greater experience than you. There will always be issues to solve between you. And that's the point, because solution will be far easier with coherence. As above, so below, as the large is the small. You take the issue of humanity and billions of souls working together, a relationship between the parts that has more coherence creates peace on earth. Relationship between the parts creates trade which makes sense, politics which changes and wants to improve, benevolence being the goal and the issue, compassion being something that is understood as the gold between relationships and family. It's coming. You live in a black and white earth, a black and white reality, and color is coming. I said it before. It's not just in Israel. It's in the relationship between the parts of you and you. Do you know how much you're loved by you? Would you like the greatest lover on the planet? It's your soul and your consciousness. And that creates such comfort that you can go from place to place smiling with how good you feel and how happy you are with life, regardless of the spinning around you, regardless of the drama around you, regardless of low consciousness all over the media, because you know better, because you know a truth that has hidden for years. The relationship between the parts is the answer to peace on earth and peace within you. As above, so below. It may be cryptic to you now, but just wait. There will be a scientist someday, a new Tesla perhaps, a new Einstein perhaps, that looks for the relationship between the parts of everything. The formulas will snap into place and consciousness will be the catalyst. It's coming. It has to. That's the track that you're on. There are still those who cannot see the track. They look beyond in the future and they say, it's not happening. You won't be here. It's going to fail. No human's going to make it. And that's only because the reader goes out and doesn't see what's here. They see something new and they don't recognize it. And they say, there's no humanity in 50 years. You won't make it. Not understanding, that's right. There won't be the kind of humanity that's here today. It will have graduated to a new level, even within 2 generations, 3, 4. You won't recognize it. The reader goes out and sees nothing they recognize because it's better than it was. They've never seen it before. It doesn't compute. They don't see what they expect. And so they come back and they say, well, you didn't make it. Oh, yes, you did. You made it in such a way that they don't recognize a world at peace. They don't recognize a world that's starting to have confluence of quality. They don't recognize the things because they're not here yet. I say it again. Go back 50 years and ask the question, how is your Wi-Fi? And they'll say, we don't know what you mean. And they say, well, okay, well, Wi-Fi is generated from that which is your internet. How is your internet? And they'll say, we don't know what you mean. They'll say, oh, well, that's because, how is your computer? How fast is it? And they'll say, we don't know what you mean. That's 3 layers removed from their reality. And you're asking them about a Wi-Fi, and they have no idea what a computer is. Do you understand? In 50 years, you won't recognize it. It's not just the technology of machines. It is the high technology of consciousness that is on its way to changing this planet. So those right now who go out and take a look at it can't even see it because they don't know what a Wi-Fi is. 3 steps removed from what's coming. I hope this isn't too cryptic for you to understand. No one can see it if they've never had it. If it's never been experienced, you don't know what humanity looks like working at 44%. You just don't. You don't know what benevolence looks like if you've never had it. Can you imagine a planet that works together? Can you imagine a political system that isn't angry with each other? No. How's your Wi-Fi? It's coming in ways you don't expect. It's coming in channeled systems that you've never seen. It's coming in inventions that will change everything you do. That's what's in the future, unseeable by so many who are so proud of being able to go and see what they see. I give you this news so you'll have an understanding of perhaps what you'll hear even through channeling. Let the purity of this message not be lost. You have free will to accelerate it or slow it down. That is free will. There may be some obstacles you have to get through, humanity, but you will get through them because the ball is rolling. The snowball is rolling down the hill, and there's no trees in sight for it to hit. How fast it goes depends on the physics of gravity, which you can control with consciousness. That's a metaphor. That's all I'll say now. The relationship between the parts of you is the secret to peace within you, to peace within humanity, and an accelerated, graduating earth. Let it be. And so it is. Hi, everybody. Thanks for watching this. I wanted to tell you this is a little time sensitive. Greetings, dear ones. I'm Kryon of Magnetic Service. This is the 5th message. Dear ones, we talk about what old souls go through. We've talked about the shift. It is why we are here. So that we can try to reveal things. Things that you're going through. Things that you may go through. Things that others around you are going through. That is the transition of the ages. We speak of the transition from an old energy to a new one. And there are so many metaphors around this. The energy is truly the energy of the entire human race. The potentials are being laid from going from an old paradigm of humanism to a new one. If you have gone from an old energy and eons, it simply didn't change. And suddenly, within a few years, it starts to create new paradigms of existence. You can imagine the train wreck. That's what we want to talk about. Old souls, each of you are different. And you will react differently to this transition. And it's so difficult to create a message which is perhaps generic to all. It can't be. Many, many years ago, more than 10, Kryon Book 5 was written. And it was the journey of a man with 7 angels, called The Journey Home. We told you that this book was a novel, a story. There have been no other stories like this. And in the story we told you that absolutely everything that the hero experienced, named Michael Thomas, everything was a metaphor for something else. And that the invitation was open for you to read the book with intuition. And what I didn't tell you is that the entire book is a story about one man and his shift. And what he had to go through from being a beautiful old soul who was very pleased and happy with who he was, to an enlightened soul who understood fully who he was. And all the things that took place in the book, one by one, was a precursor of information and knowledge and wisdom about the shift. One of the things that was the most difficult for Michael Thomas to go through was where he had to release his baggage. And in the story, it is told that an angel that Michael Thomas was with and loved and appreciated looked at Michael Thomas and said, "I couldn't help but notice that you're carrying some baggage." And the angel said that the baggage would unbalance him because he had actually reframed himself and had reworked himself to the place where he had accepted some gifts and tools that were new, that he was wearing and carrying. But if he had his baggage, he wouldn't be able to use the new tools. And so the angel said, "Release it now. Let me take it and hold it for you. I'll walk beside you. Just let me carry it for you." And Michael Thomas backed up and said, "Don't touch my stuff." And he walked out the door, and the angel knew what was next and didn't say a word. Dear ones, you have to know this, that the beauty of free choice means that you're not going to be admonished, pulled back, and said, "Don't do that, don't do that." That's not going to happen. Because once your choice of free choice is made, you can go anywhere you want. And Michael walked into a storm. And the storm actually forced him into a decision. He could keep his stuff and be destroyed by the storm. The winds were enormous. Or he could release his baggage and survive. It's a metaphor for understanding and awakening to new truths. He wasn't going to be killed. He simply would not be able to move ahead into a new paradigm unless he released the baggage. As the story goes, Michael Thomas indeed released his baggage. And in the story, the baggage that he had was the personal things that he held dear to himself and the truths that he had, and all wrapped up into metaphoric things that he carried around with him, and he released it. And if that weren't bad enough, the storm tore it apart. It was being released. He saw it go to shreds, and he stood there seemingly without anything. Seemingly without anything. For a little while, according to the story, Michael was mad at God. He accused the angel later of a scenario, a system that said, well, I see how things work here in this magic land. If I don't do what you say, you're just going to do it to me anyway. He was mad. And the retort of the angel with that accusation was as follows. Michael, you ask, who gives permission to take away your stuff? You did when you decided to go on this journey and call yourself an awakened old soul. What is the definition of bad stuff or difficulty going through this? And that is what we're going to talk about now. Michael Thomas released his baggage all at once. Some of you don't. Some of you are very attached to certain things. And you will find that you will release some things and not others. You're still out of balance, dear ones. In the room right now, there are those who've released a lot, but not all. There are those who've released all, and there are those who release none. It doesn't change the fact that you are an old soul sitting here or listening to this with full knowledge of the shift. And now I want to bring this home. I want to start itemizing some things. Briefly, small list, but so important. Some things you've heard from me before in different ways, but now I'm putting it together. The old soul releasing and changing. What is required really, truly, to move ahead? And in the process, I will tell you this list is challenging. And in the challenges that I list to you, there is always solution. Always. But it's challenging. It's why some of you have said, I release it. Kind of. But I'm going to hang on to this one. My partner tells his story of what he then released, and all the time he withheld one thing. And then he had a storm that forced him to release the last thing. Dear ones, you don't need a storm. If you're paying attention, you don't need a storm. The storm is something that Spirit creates with you, with free choice that you walk into, and synchronicity brings it so that you will have a greater experience when you reach the other side of the storm. When you go through the darkness and you come out healed. Things that perhaps you're not even thinking of that needs to be released. So let's do what I'll call 3 and 3. There'll be 3 attributes that I'm going to give you that some of you have heard before that are primary of things that the old soul needs to understand. That release is something that will actually guide you forward. After Michael released his bags, he changed. And the change was because suddenly he was open to certain other things that he never would be open to while he held his bags. And so the second 3 some will be change. Things to look forward to. Things to change into. And here they go. Dear old soul, I would love you to release everything that anybody has taught you to this point. Why? Kryon, you're crazy. There's been some profound teaching from my parents, from my school, from everything. Everything. Now let us analyze this. Everything that was given to you and taught to you was a derivative of the way things worked in an old paradigm which is changing. I want you to be able to drop everything that you were ever taught. We've told you before the difficulty here. You might want to, but it's almost a betrayal of those who taught it to you. And whether it's a loving parent, or whether it's a friend or a teacher or school, you have to be willing to drop everything that was ever taught. And the reasoning, yet again, it was fine for the time. It had integrity when it was taught. And now you're about to engage a new planet. You have to be willing. Difficult, challenging, and very doable. Tough. Can it get harder? Yes, number 2. Everything that by yourself you have learned in the old energy works for you, is you, and about you, and defines you. Drop it. You will not survive well in the new energy when you have defined yourself from an old. And don't carry the residuals of it. Drop it. Come in fresh, without any of the baggage of the knowledge what you think is right, wrong, true, false, because that is going to be upended as you move forward into a paradigm of light. Dear ones, literally, the teaching, the learning, everything you have experienced so far has been in a dark room. You couldn't even see each other. You had to feel what was going on. And you came to certain conclusions based upon feeling what was going on. You couldn't even see one another. And now you walk into the light where you're learning coherence. You're learning to link with your hearts. You're learning things that didn't exist then. New tools. You can't carry what you learned in the dark into the light. It won't work. The tools themselves will get in the way. That's tough. But old soul, I can tell that so many of you are listening and analyzing. When it's done, there will be a willingness to step into a new life, a new way. It does not have to have a storm. How willing are you to let go? If you're going to hold on, there probably will be some more challenges for you. That is the beauty of Spirit, loving you enough to giving you options and pushing you a little, making it difficult perhaps for you then to let go. That is the love of God. Dear ones, that's how much you're loved. Instead of simply casting you away saying, well, that person's not going to do anything, let's move on to the next old soul. Spirit doesn't do that. The love of God is far greater and grander. You will be pushed all your life and reminded about the stuff you're hanging on to. Because Spirit knows who you'll be if you release your stuff. And you come into the light, you live longer. You don't worry about things. You don't take on other people's problems. You have compassionate action. It's different. Number 3. You might not think that this is very strong. This sounds timid compared to the other 2. I want you to stop deciding what others think about you. Because things are changing. In this new energy, there's going to be a greater acceptance of esoteric truths. And it's subtle. But when you start telling people about what you are into and what you believe, I want you to watch. Instead of turning the other way, rolling their eyes, or laughing, they will come a little closer to you. And they'll say, tell me a little more. You know, I've had a feeling about that. It's already starting to happen. You're careful who you talk to about what the subject is. Now I want you to drop the reactions from the old energy of who you are and think differently. When you present light to people and integrity to people about what you believe and what you're into, I want you to see their reaction. Because so many of them lean a little closer now. They don't back up and go away. Lean a little closer. And they say, you know, I've heard that before. Tell me a little more. What have I asked you to do? I've asked you to drop history of how you've been treated. That's tough. It's tough. And you know why? Because you've been treated like that for eons. It's in your akash. It's a knee-jerk reaction. What people are going to think. Suddenly you come into the light, what we call the field, and it affects humanity. And it may not affect them so they're all awakening to new truths, but I'll tell you, they're far more accepting when they hear things that resound to the truth than ever before. So let's call those the three primary things to drop. There's more. But if you can drop those, dear ones, everything else becomes easy. And the more you drop, the easier it is. How about you considering dropping all three at the same time? That's going to save a lot of frustration. When Michael Thomas dropped his baggage, everything realigned. And the teaching really began on these 7 angels. He had to go through this before he could start to absorb what they had. Some of you in the New Age, the metaphysics, the esoterics, have come through the last years with certain tools that worked. And whether you're a reader or whether you're a healer, you are aware that some of these tools are now suffering. They're not working as well. And so what we have said in the past, we'll say again, even before we go to the next 3. You must drop the knowledge of what the old tools were supposed to do. How do you drop knowledge? It's in there forever. I want you to drop the perception that you need them. And the reason is this, because new tools are on the way. And the new tools won't look like the old tools. Forget the old tools. Sometimes the new tools will do the same thing. They may even kind of perceptually look a little like it, but they're going to be double in efficiency. In the light, remember, the difference, metaphorically, is now you can see the other person. You can align with them. You can heart connect. You can have a confluence of energy that you couldn't in the dark. Therefore, the new tools are going to be completely different because you're in the light. You can see. Don't be alarmed that the old tools don't work anymore. And what we have said countless times before, depending upon your path in life, depends upon how quickly you get them, the synchronicity of who you will meet to help you with them, how efficient they will be. And the old soul who has used the old tools and is used to it is going to be impatient, tapping their toe the whole time. Bring on the new. I'm a very patient person, but bring on the new. Bring on the new. Be patient. Take a little vacation because you're going to need to. There's work coming. And these new tools, whatever you want to call them, The ability to see, to read, to write, to go, to do, to heal, to be, to balance, to love. These are the tools coming. And they have nothing to do with the old ones at all. Nothing. You're going to be busy. The sparks will arrive one by one. The last three have to do with acceptance of change. That's tough for a human being, much less an old soul who has an Akashic that is rich with the ages. There are certain kinds of things that humans react, object, all of the things that humans do based upon past experience. Number one, acceptance of change, acceptance of the new tools, acceptance of new ways. Can you do that? It's one thing to drop your baggage, but you're going to go looking for what you dropped. And that's the change we want you to know about. There's an angel walking beside you with all the bags you dropped if you want it. You can pick them up again. You have free choice. I shouldn't have told you that. And that means that they're really not gone. These things that you say you've dropped, they really are not gone. They're part of you. They always will be. Dropping them really truly is a metaphor that says in your psyche and what you cognize is completely and totally cleared. And you're ready for the new. Being ready for new things is a nice statement until the new things come along. And you're saying, no, not for me. That's the human being. And the older you are, the worse it is. And the reason truly is that you perceive change as difficult and something that you're not necessarily suited for because you're stayed in your ways. What if some of the change involved that which was not comfortable for you? That is what you have to conquer. You can learn anything, dear old soul, honestly. You have been through so much change. You have been there when everything has been invented that you currently use. And now it's time to look at it again. Here it comes. What is it you object to? What is it you won't do? What is just a little too new for you? What is it that you assign to the young people, which is going to be the future of humanity? And you say, well, not for me. It's only for the kids. Not understanding that it's going to be the future of humanity. Tools are coming that will connect you to other people in ways you never dreamed of, that will actually allow long distance healing, confluences of energies put together, hearts connecting, coherence. How would you like a situation where you could have worldwide coherence with a device? Where everybody at the same time is looking at you and you're looking at them. You think that's a little too spacey for you? It's coming. What if the world starts to expect it because the science shows it works? And then even young people turn to it and they say, time out. Time for a coherent session. And then they all look at something, which I'm not going to tell you what it is. You think that's funny? It's coming. I want you to look at this differently. Accept new things. Number two, I have talked about this at least 4 other times. It is one of the most difficult things to change in your psyche, to change in your psyche. Do not let the past dictate the future. And you do it because it's simply the way things work. You have become accustomed to the way everything works. Some of you are so cynical about the way it works, you expect it to fail. You expect dysfunction in certain things. And here come those things again. And you look at them, and your whole brain goes, dysfunction again. In the new energy and the light, don't let what has happened in the past paste itself into a new future with light. Here you are saying, well, it's happening again. You're wrong. That's going to stop you. What's going to happen are things that only have the residual of the past until that clears. There's going to be things that you didn't expect, things that will clear and work differently, and you won't even believe it. It's not supposed to be that way. You've learned, for instance, that politics is only one way for hundreds of years. Suddenly in the light, well, not so much. It's going to start changing. There might even be integrity. There might even be reason and compassion. There might even be common sense on how to pick leaders differently than you ever have before. And yet there will be those that say, impossible, eventually it'll corrupt just like it did before. Do you see what I'm saying? You cannot carry the disappointments from the past, or even human nature itself. You can't carry it into the future, because everything is starting to change. Watch how you think about these things. When certain things pop up in the news or whatever, and they seem like way out of kilter from the way things used to be, there's a tendency for humans to say, well, that won't last. And then it does. And you have to think about it. Can you be fresh with it? Can you make an affirmation that would say, I expect only benevolent change, wisdom, to start to develop in the things that didn't used to have them. I expect change to be benevolent. I don't expect it to be as it was. And I'm going to do my best to project the positive things into everything I see, into the future. That was number 5, and this is the last one, number 6. A change that may not seem like it's that difficult, but oh boy, is it. It is the subject of the day. I want you to learn to relax with life. Can you do that? Because, dear ones, I'll say it again. 2 steps forward, 1 step back. And when the step back happens, the monster called fear will want to cover up everything you've ever done. That's good. It'll want you to forget the light and go backwards into dark. This is going to take a while. There are going to be disappointments. There are going to be challenges. Don't let them derail you on this beautiful train that you're on. Understand. 2 steps forward, 1 step back. 2 steps forward, 1 step back. It's not going to be a linear climb of a ladder of enlightenment for humanity. It's going to take its toll on some. Some won't be able to stay on the train. That's already happened. Some will see it and say, too difficult for me, and not join you. And all the while, I'm asking you to relax. What you have learned today and the day before and the day before is on purpose. How to align hearts. The processes of alignment between human beings as a group, individuals in 2s and 4s, is going to be critical. And you're going to be having to practice this in order to stay balanced And so you don't take on others' problems and call them your own and let them burden you and take you down. That balance is necessary for what you're going to see the earth go through. 2 steps forward, 1 step back. Can you do that? Now that you have been alerted of how it works and the expectations, did you notice that the teaching is becoming more specific from Kryon? And that all these years up to 2012 was a preparation so that you would know who Kryon was. And the integrity and the beauty and the love that I see for humanity. And now the teaching begins. To get you through the shift, old soul, so that you'll understand what is happening, why it's happening. Put your hand on your heart and be peaceful. And know you exist for a reason. You are the light of this planet. Don't let anybody put it out with doubts or fears of what you are, what you're doing. That's enough for today. And so it is. Hi, everybody. Thanks for watching this. I wanted to tell you this is a little time sensitive.
Greetings, dear ones. I am Kryon of Magnetic Service. And my partner steps aside. This is called channeling. And it's mysterious to many. It's beautiful to us. It is a method whereby the multidimensional source of creation, which many of you call sacredness and God, has a chance to communicate with that which you have called humanism. And in the process, we call it soul communication. And it's different, dear ones, than human communication. And so we would like to start a series of channelings that would include the explanation of what we have called soul communication. Let us begin with some basics. No, let us not. Let us begin with some basics. We know who you are in this room. Dear ones, I want to teach. But not without first acknowledging the family. I want to teach you about you. Everything I'm going to do in this chair that my partner has allowed me to do, as he steps aside, he doesn't know what's coming. He's practiced this. He's practiced not knowing what's coming. He's practiced allowance without filters. I'm going to explain that eventually. And so I am open in this portal, which you call channeling, to allow for a third language to come flowing in that you can feel in an interdimensional way that is not with words and not linear. And some of you will. This particular channel is being published, and some of you are listening and reading. And this is open to you as well, for I know of the potential of your listening and reading. Odd as it may sound to you, this is part of the interdimensional potentials that God has as the central source. The potentials of your awakening itself, that you would pick it up and look at it. It's there. We see it as reality even before it happens. We got to start with the basics. Human consciousness is complex. There will come a day when scientists may consider human consciousness as a branch of physics, because it does not follow the patterns of linear physics, even the patterns of quantum physics, because it is what they would call biased in directions of personality, events, akash. It's complicated. So the rules would be very, very basic, but they're outside of that, which is three-dimensional physics as it is known today. And so to describe communications in this fashion goes beyond the limits of any understood science. It challenges you to think differently, act differently. Soul communication. And there are two ways. Communications from things to you that are multidimensional, and from you to them, which is multidimensional. There is the difference between linear and non-linear communications. I am going to explain it the best I can, with explanations perhaps I've not given before. I want you to consider for a moment you have an old typewriter. And you are typing along, and as you type along, you will see the letters on the page, one after another, appear. Pretty soon you have words, and then sentences, and then thought groups. This is linear communication. Now, what you are beholding at the moment, whether you're reading or hearing, is the same. One word after another, in a structure for the language of my partner. It is linear. It is in a row, in a line, like the typewritten words on the page. That is linear communication. That is human communication. Non-linear communication would be as follows. Now pay attention, for this is going to be what my partner calls a stretch. Pretend that the typewriter is stuck. And you can type all day long, but you're only going to have one image. Every letter is going to show itself over the other. You type away, it does not advance at all. It simply types over itself, one letter. Now, what would you see on the page, dear one, at the end of a long letter to a friend? A smudge. All the letters piled up, inking over one another. You'd have no idea. You would look at it and you'd be sorry that the typewriter failed and you hadn't noticed. Now consider for a moment somebody comes along and they have non-linear communication skills. They would look at the smudge and see the letter. And that's as clear as I can make it. They're conceptual. They would see the thought that went into it. They would see the linearity outside of its linearity. The letters are there, dear ones, but they're not there in linear form. They're all together as a group. Therefore, a non-linear communicator will see the smudge and see the entire letter. Now, there's an attribute of this, and it's difficult to describe to you. And it's out of the logic that you would have, and yet it is. And so let me try to explain it. My partner goes slowly, so this will be understood. When the conceptual person looks at the smudge, they're looking at something that exists already. A letter has been typed. So they're not making something up. They are simply reading something in a non-linear way. The letter has been written, oddly, all in one smudge, but it has been written. There is an attribute of a non-linear mind, which you call autism, that you should study. There are many autistic human beings who can tell you the day of the week of a future date in any year, in any month. If you would ask that person, what is the day of the week in May of 2035? And they would come up with it, maybe a Tuesday or a Wednesday. And it would be there, and they would do it instantly. You would gasp at their computational efforts. And here is the answer. Computation has nothing to do with it. It's not a formula. It's not math. It exists. And so it is known. You can go to any computer that is calendar friendly and find that information because it already exists. It's a concept that has already been developed and known. The nonlinear mind, therefore, is able to go to it and interpret it instantly because they see the concept. They're not calculating anything. Now you know the difference between linear and nonlinear. There's a lot of communication that wants to come to you from all manner of sources. So I'm going to start the list. Channeling is what you're hearing right now. My partner has practiced it for 23 years. When he started, it was ugly. For we're not speaking to him in a linear fashion. You see, he is a master interpreter of nonlinear concepts coming through his pineal. Now I am speaking to him in his real time and he is interpreting. So it sounds like a flow of linear words, but it's a thought group that I keep giving him over and over. You see, we have practiced together. We both had to adjust. When we started, I gave him the concept like the letter in one smudge, like that. And then he had to remember what it said and give you the channeling, and he wasn't very good at it. And then we realized that if we kept giving him the smudge over and over, that he could interpret it in a linear fashion. And so we repeat the concepts. By the way, I just gave you the secret to graduate intuitive thought. Ask for Spirit to repeat the intuitive thought. Now, my partner didn't even teach that today, and I had to come along with the obvious. Repeat it. That should be your request to Spirit when you don't understand what it is. Repeat it. And have that intuitive thought then repeat it, so that you can grasp it and see it for it is beauty and its clarity. And we will. We want to meet you in between the linear and non-linear veil. Do you realize this is why Spirit has talked to humanity in quatrains and in metaphors forever? That's all we have. And the interpretation of these things then become puzzles. People reading Scripture, why can't you talk normally, Spirit? Because we are not linear. The channeling is not linear, but it sounds like it is because we continue to repeat the smudge. And even this channeling, all of it, as long as it is on the clock for you to see, as long as it takes, is all being given at the same time to my partner over and over, so he can see it. And so we begin. What is this channeling? It is the pineal opening up and giving my partner these communications and allowing him to interpret him through his experience, interpreting them and giving them to you. It is a form of communication that is open to all humanity, and you don't have to call it channeling. You can call it whatever you want to, and every single human being is open to learning it. Not necessarily for others. How about just for yourself? Some call it automatic writing. This is a communication portal that opens through the pineal for you, and it is not from the brain. And we've said this before. This is soul communication. This is multidimensional communication. It has nothing to do with synapse. Nothing. It is not a brain function. That's why it's hard. Now there's many kinds of communications from many things. Let us speak of the difficulty yet again. Anything I'm going to mention from now on in this section of others communicating to you must be interpreted. What else is there? There are many things. So I'm giving my partner a list, and he can choose what he wants to talk about in the time that he has. Personal. Let's talk about personal. How can you hear what Spirit or any other multidimensional source has for you when it doesn't come in a linear fashion? And my partner gave it today, and the answer is through practice of recognizing intuitive thought. And not, number one, not trying to interpret it with your intellect. Do not let the synapse of your brain get in the way of God. Do I have to say that again? You will learn to put it aside. What is it that my partner had to learn as the engineer in order to channel? To get out of the way. To stop analyzing. If it's him, is he making it up? Is it from his brain? Or is it bigger than that? So for you personally, dear one, this is what you have to do. Now there's many sources other than that which you call God that wish to speak to you in this fashion. We'll get there. But if it's a non-linear source, it's going to come through intuitive thought, not synapse. Where do we go next with this? Let's talk about animals. You love them, don't you? And what do you know about animals? The ones you have and are in love with, that you call pets, have personalities. And they can talk to you. And what does that sound like, dear one? What does their voice sound like? And you go, well, Kryon, you already know they don't have a voice. Oh, really? Then how do they talk to you? Now it gets good, doesn't it? Through concepts. Their conceptual thought groups are available to pick up, guess where? Through your pineal, which is the interpreter of multidimensional things in your body, not your brain, and will give you the same thought groups they have. And some of you are good at it. There's ones who are listening to this right now, called animal whisperers. You know exactly what I'm talking about. Why do they call it whispering? I'll give you my interpretation. Because it's not linear. Because it whispers to your mind through the pineal and comes in the thought group very softly, all at once, like a smudge. You know what the dog is thinking. You know what the cat is thinking. You know what the horse is thinking. The requests they have, perhaps the distress they have, perhaps the celebration or the love. Now this is easy for you. Easy. Because you all have felt this. You know what I'm speaking about. This is not different than the same muscle that you're going to use in meditation to listen to God. It's the same apparatus of your system. So is it true that communicating with animals is soul communication? Yes! There's to yours. And if you're good at that, why not go then and not doubt yourself? And be good at that which is within your own higher self. Now, I just gave away who you're communicating with. Your higher self is that self which vibrates higher than you are. It's part of your soul group, the core. And this is what gives you information from the other side of the veil, which you call angelic, sacred God. It's the same as in animals. Did you know, here's another one, in the list that I'm giving my partner. Did you know that actions are communication? When my partner speaks about the grid, and when you sense that which is crystalline grid, the battlefield, what has happened there, it's concepts. And it's coming through the pineal. And it's thought groups, not linear communication. Some of you are good at that. You are proud that you can feel energy where you go. You can feel the energy of a group. You can feel the energy of the land, which is the crystalline grid. You can feel the energy of a situation. And you're good at it. What are you feeling? This is soul communication at its best. It does not come from the brain. It is not intellectual. This is physics. You are picking it up through the pineal, interpreting it, and you get the information. Something has happened on the ground where you are. It may take you to your knees. That's communication. Beautiful. But you had to interpret it. Why is it that the communication which is so personal to you is the hardest to interpret? You with you. This is what the teaching is today, trying to open that up. There are many other kinds of communication. What about those other things and what I'll call universal communication? When you walk into the forest and the trees talk to you, what's their voice sound like? Am I getting through to you? You are able to hear these things in your own way. They are not synaptical. It's another kind of physics. It's soul communication, and they're talking right to that part of your consciousness, your Merkaba, your quantum field that makes sense to you because it's conceptual. Are the trees in trouble? Are they crying? Are they celebrating? And there are those of you who are hearing my voice and in this room who know the answers to all of those. Kryon, is it true that in the forest there are what you would call divas? Here's my answer. Are you kidding? Of course. Of course. What are they? They are multidimensional aspects of Gaia. I love it. When human beings cannot get that, they want to dress them up and put outfits on them, make them little, call them different things. Give them voices, put them in movies. They're beautiful, and you know they are. And they're everywhere. Go into the forest. They'll talk to you. Sit down in the grass and let them land on you. Now that's linear. I want you to picture that, and they will. They're not landing anywhere. They just are. They're part of the soup that is Gaia, that is Mother Nature, the personality of the love of the planet for humanity as it walks into it. It's a celebration of your life. You're not going to get bad things from a diva. You're not going to get bad information from hugging a tree. You know that, don't you? What does that tell you about how Gaia feels about you? That's just a few of the things when it comes to the subject of communications to you. Let's talk about the other one, and then we'll close it off. And we'll continue tomorrow. Now, my partner, it's important that you record all of these things and present them so that those who are not here tomorrow can hear the rest of the story. That is your challenge. What about you communicating the other direction? Now, you have got linear communication. That's all you've got. You do not have necessarily the tools for multidimensional communication. Now you can develop them, and many of you have, but in general, you've got linear communication. So what about you with spirit? Let me tell you the truth. Dear ones, we don't have any trouble understanding you because we are the master interpreters. We know exactly what you're saying. And it doesn't matter whether you're thinking it or whether you're saying it or you're just thinking about thinking it or saying it. We know. Because we're with you all the time. The higher self, which vibrates above the corporeal self, knows the psyche of your mind. And when you sit to meditate, we know what you're going to do before you do it, because the potentials are there. You're already thinking about it before you do it. I'll give you some rules. Stop giving us laundry lists of what you want. We know what you want. Sit and say to us, "Dear Spirit, tell me what it is you want me to know." Because we're already on board with everything in your life. Do I have to say that again? We're already on board with everything in your life. Come to us and let us talk to you. Just let us talk. And try to interpret the thought groups that come first without analyzing. Get used to this. But as far as you talking to us, it doesn't matter how you do it. Now, there will be those that say, well, there has to be wrong ways to do it. No, there aren't. No, there aren't. Well, Kryon, what do you think about religious groups who have to face a certain direction or have a prayer rug or wear something special? And what I say to you is, let them do that. It honors God. In their culture, it honors God. Is there anything better than that to prepare them to talk to us? The same love goes into their communications as yours. The cultural differences between you do not compute to the other side of the veil, for we see a human as the human, the corporeal piece of God that you are. It doesn't matter what you're wearing or what you're sitting on. Is that clear? There is no wrong way to speak to creative source. Well, maybe, Kryon, there isn't, but I've had a few times when I was yelling at God. And we heard you, but we did not hear the yell. That's linear. This is hard to explain. What we heard is loving frustration. Loving frustration. We heard the yell. We didn't see the anger. You weren't angry. You were frustrated. And that's the time when we want to surround you the most. The more you yell at God, the more there are angels around you wanting to hold your hand and take you if you'd let us. Next time you decide to yell at God, would you also open your heart and let us hold you for a while? Is that okay? In the moment of greatest frustration that you have, where you have no answers at all and you can't figure it out, can you just be held? Is that all right? Because we're here for that. Old soul, you got to get used to this communication. This is so available. Actions are a language. How you behave talks to the crystalline grid, talks to the Gaia grid. What you think talks to the magnetic grid, which we have called the seat of human consciousness. Without you saying a thing, that's another way of communicating to everything around you. What you say out of your mouth in linear fashion, the cells of your body hear. How many self-help gurus have had to tell you that you're going to bring to you what you say? Why is it that hypochondriacs bring to themselves the very diseases that they fear the most and talk about? Because the body hears them and gives them what they ask for. The body is listening. The grids are listening. Even the human beings around you are listening. Do you spin in drama? Here we are again. Is this attractive to other human beings? Have you ever thought about that? What do you want to show somebody about your belief system? That you're out of balance? And that they ought to do what you do? Think about it. How are you presenting mastery to humanity, old soul? What have you learned through all of the ages that you brought to the party today? And is it spinning? Or is it love? Well, Kryon, that's easier said than done. How do you stop spinning? I just told you. If you'll open your heart and allow these things to communicate, it's going to start a peaceful countenance with you. This is called awakening to spirit. Getting out of the old habits and the old fears, and starting to claim the part of the old soul which is you, available to you and to humanity, for those around you. So much to be told about how you communicate with others. Multidimensional communication. Those of you who are good at speaking to the animals, not listening, but speaking to them, have developed thought group communication. You're already on board. For the best kind of soul communication there is, you're starting to think out of the box. You're looking into the animal's eyes and you're giving them pictures, aren't you? And they're getting it, aren't they? It ought to tell you, this can work. Humans can develop multidimensional attributes and characteristics that are entirely consciousness-driven, sent through the pineal to anywhere you want. There are helpers around you, we've told you. Do I have to list them? Entities, groups, all around you that are not from here. Not just the Pleiadians, Arcturians, Orions, Hathors, from Sirius, endless. And you know what they have in common? Non-linear thought. And you can communicate with them the same way you do with animals. Dear human being, soul communication, we're going to open the door before we close to this and tell you this is something we want you to consider and to study, to know about, to realize. Don't let it be mysterious. I've just given you the attributes of to and from, or from and to. In the next section, I'll continue with another subject. What is it that blocks it? What are filters? What can you do to enhance it? Soul communication is part of what the old soul must get into and learn. And the answer of what it's going to create is balance on the planet and peace on earth. It begins here. It begins with understanding, demystifying. There is structure in these things. There is a benevolent system in these things. There is common sense in these things. We invite you to find it, for it will create spiritual evolution on this planet, led by the very ones who are reading and listening to this voice. Family, that's the lesson for today. It's beautiful, isn't it? All we want to do is communicate. And it's time to get on with it. Explaining how it works, the suggestions of how to make it better, even the very thing you hear now, which is channeling. Demystifying what some have called spooky, unnatural, weird, just because it isn't linear. We'll stand by for lots of things that aren't linear. And the one that is the greatest of all is love. I can't explain it, can you? Emulate it. And so it is. Hi everybody, thanks for watching this. I wanted to tell you this is a little time sensitive.
Use that information to move into a meditation and a channel from Kryon. So I invite you to close your eyes, place your hand on your heart, and in this moment, I invite you to feel the energy of the many thousands of souls that are tuning in, whether it's in the now or in the future, which in the future becomes their now. And so joining us are thousands of beautiful souls, and I want you to connect heart to heart with each person coming into this moment. And with our collective consciousness, let us send a wave of love and compassion to those on the planet in this moment who are going through grief. There are many who have been losing loved ones that have had their end of days on earth, and they are in a moment of grief. And while we can't take that grief away immediately, we can send love and compassion out to those individuals. And allow them to feel our support. And allow us to visualize them, perhaps not in a month or not quite a year, but allow them to be softened in their reaction. And that they can smile when they think of that loved person, knowing that we are in a circle of life and we don't truly die. We simply change energy forms. And that loved one that they have lost is now part of their soul group, guiding them, assisting them as they continue to walk on this planet. And with that connection and thought, allow your hands to relax. Take a deep breath. And we welcome the message from Kryon.
Greetings, dear ones. I'm Kryon of Magnetic Service. Each time we come before you in this way, I hope you understand the love, the benevolence, the beauty. As we sit at your feet and give you the wisdom that is here. This planet is changing greatly. You may be aware of it. Some of you are seeing things that are fearful or appear fearful because of the shift, of the change, not understanding that some of that change may be that which will upset the normal. And it's the normal, perhaps, that is not going to return. A normal of low consciousness that is starting to move away from humanity as you know it. This is the first of the month channel. That is to say, the first one of the month. All 4 of these channels will be available and are available for free. And so I then am free to give you a 4-piece channel, and I do it yet again. Part 1 of a subject. And this subject truly is the elephant under the table, as some of you would say. Those of you who are watching this program, who have tuned into this program because you want to watch it, have something all in common. Various degrees of something in common, and that is you're starting to ask questions. And the questions you are asking is, have I missed something? Is there something perhaps bigger than I was told? Specifically, when it comes to that which is God, the creative source, spirituality, the energy on the planet, that some are saying is moving to a place it never was before, and they'd be right. The elephant under the table is that you're different. I'm going to call it consciousness shift. Some have called it awakening. I will say that it is humans' new frontier. Not just that which is awakening, but a perception shift of the planet that is gradually starting to happen. And it refers not just to spiritual things. It actually relates to the way you think. Human consciousness is starting to vibrate higher. And the first thing that takes place, dear ones, the first thing is those who start to be more aware of what they were not aware of before. Let's call it, instead of an awakening, let's call it a greater awareness. So that is the new frontier. Greater awareness, specifically about that which is spirit, about your own spirituality. And that's why you're here. It's the elephant under the table because it has changed your life. Sometimes it has made it more difficult in your life. Some of you have lost friends and family members because of it. So we're going to discuss it. The attributes, then, of this awareness shift. That's the subject. The first of these four is simply going to be looking around. I have given many parables, many examples, many metaphors of what some of you have experienced that actually got you in trouble. And I would say in trouble, that is to say, when you go against the norm, there are those who say, how could you? You were trained in this, you learned this, this is your staple, this is the way it works, and you have varied from that. Therefore, we're not going to be with you anymore. Perhaps that's why you're here listening to a program like this. You're among friends and good company. When I first started with my partner and started channeling on this planet, one of the first parables I gave was about a man named Woe. I told you he wasn't really a man or a woman. He was a woe man, but we call him a man. We call him a he because it's easy. And it had to do with a disturbance in the corner. We called it woe in the room of lesson. And the disturbance in the corner is a metaphor for him being in a room. And the room was his life. But there was a corner that always vibrated a little strangely. And those who were in the room with him said, yes, this is life. There'll always be things that you can look at or not look at. And there'll always be odd things. Don't look at it because it'll capture you. Or it's not good for you. And in this parable, Woe eventually looked, and it was like a door that he cracked open, and there was light there. There was other things there he didn't understand, and it changed his life. It was benevolent. It was loving. That was the first time we gave that kind of a parable, indicating that if you want to look, you might find a greater truth than you've been told. We gave a parable which became a book, The Journey Home. And in that there was an average man, Michael Thomas, who had a near-death experience, and he came back with instructions from an angel. The angel told him to move into his city until he came to a park and sit there and wait, and he did. And finally he thought he saw something in the hedge, like an opening or perhaps an anomaly. And he went to the hedge and he saw that it was indeed a an opening, a doorway, if you want to say that. And then he had a decision. He said, am I imagining it or not? Has somebody made this happen to me or not? Am I being tricked or not? And he tried to unsee that, and he couldn't. Every time he looked at the hedge, he saw the doorway, every single time. Eventually, dear ones, he went through that, and the adventure began. And he learned about things which were bigger than he was told. But the point is this, that when you start looking and something occurs, you cannot then delete that. Your conscious, your brain captures something critical, an opening perhaps, an awareness perhaps. Some have called it even an awakenings of what is it? And you're not frightened of it because you know that what it is that you have seen or felt is okay. It's safe, and you would like to know more about it. There are so many who have called these channelings a trick, that somehow you are brainwashed and you're tricked into something, and then you're captured forever. Dear ones, what if you went from darkness to light and you like the light better? Is that a trick? I'll tell you something that you should hear and you should need to know perhaps, and that is that all of you have the ability to look. And that if you choose to look, dear ones, that's like an outstretched hand to all of us to say, look at that. He's looking, she's looking. Let's give them something to see. That's what happened to my partner. That's what happened to many of you. You saw a greater truth. You went to look further at it, and it became that which is now your life because it saved some of you. We know who's watching. It became something that has extended your life. We know who's watching. What if God is bigger than you were told? What if God is not even representative of that word itself? A word that sometimes means anger and judgment and dysfunction like the Greeks had. That creative source which made you is provable all over the world. If you don't believe in that which is God, what if you erase the whole idea of a Father in the sky, instead have a benevolent source that you are part of, that has a grander scheme than anything anyone has told you? Let me close with this until the next section. There are physicians around this planet who are very, very good at something, and that is saving lives. And they spend their time often in the operating rooms, emergency cases mostly, those who are dying from accidents mostly, trying to save their lives and bring them back because it's not time yet in our way of thinking and your way of thinking, perhaps. They come in and there's been an accident and their heart stops. And for whatever reason it is, and it can be a multitude of reasons and so many accidents, they're resuscitated then. And that physician is good at this, at saving people and bringing them back, and they've seen it over and over and over, where someone would be clinically dead for a number perhaps of moments or minutes or whatever. Over and over, you've seen this, you know this. And the thing that they will tell you over and over, ask them. Some of them have written books on it, is this. A person comes back from that near-death experience, and the first thing they want to know when they recover and look at the doctor is this: why did you bring me back? You see, they saw something. The door started to open and the light shone, and they felt the love and the benevolence. They felt safe and beautiful. Oh my, can you imagine such a thing? Even though the family was back there on the planet and all that, and all they wanted to do was stay. And it wasn't a trick of the mind, as some biologists will tell you. That's real. And then they come back into a planet where they have to work with consciousnesses, lows and highs and all this. And They're disappointed. So many. And then they philosophize about it, and some become authors and teachers and healers themselves, and often the near-death experience has opened them to this. They saw the truth, and they want to show it to you without you having to go through what they did. And that's why you sit and listen to them. And we've had them. So many times we, meaning that which is the channeling, we've had them to give to you. We've had them present on programs like this. We've tried to show you there is more. There is an awareness starting to happen, and you can't unsee it, dear ones. And in the next section, when we come back, when we channel next week, we will continue. And the continuation will be what happens when you see the truth in all of its glory, and no one else does. I think it matches so many of those right now who are listening. Are you interested? This is you. This is about the awakening awareness process on the planet. Not just you, but so many around you. I'll be back. And so it is.